My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. There's nothing better than the perfect jean and going out top combo, or an outfit that perfectly matches your plans. Abercrombie's relaxed jean goes with every occasion. Date nights with something lace, or daytime with a cozy sweater. And their barrel jean will surprise you. It's the trend that will become a staple in your wardrobe. Abercrombie denim comes in tons of rises, fits, and washes. Find your perfect pair online or in store.
The Dental Download podcast is your source for insight from conversations with fellow dentists, specialists, and leaders in the industry. With new episodes every Monday morning, I'm your host, Dr. Haley. Let's get into this week's episode. Okay, hi everyone. We have a wonderful guest here. Carly, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Carly Carlson. I'm a CPA in Bloomington, Minnesota, and I own Fiat Tax. We are a tax and accounting firm that specializes in tax prep and support for dentists who own their own practices. So we really believe in healthcare small business and doctors being able to stay as business owners, and we want to help them along on that journey.
Okay, so when did you start working specifically with dentists in your own career?
I've been working with dentists since 2014, but I started my business in 2019. So I was kind of doing it, working for someone else before, and then finally decided to go out on my own. I didn't acquire an existing practice, so I started my practice from the ground up, which is a unique experience. Not one that every business owner will have, but I'm so grateful for that because now I feel like I can relate to my clients in a way that I hadn't before. Like I got to advise people and talk about business and talk about finances, but never with the perspective of being a business owner myself. So it just feels now like I'm on a parallel path with my clients, and I really love that.
Yeah, that is a very unique way to look at it. And for working with dentists with their taxes, why would someone want to go with someone that specifically works with dentists? Like what's so unique about taxes for dentist practice owners?
I mean, I think you could probably get away with working with a generalized CPA and your compliance needs would be met, right? As a business owner and as a US citizen, you're required to file a tax return every year. And there is part of that's just compliance, just making sure like the box is checked, you file your return by April 15th and pay your taxes. To me, I think there's way more value in having someone who's dental specific as an advisor throughout the year. So if you are just using an accountant to file your return, you never talk to them the rest of the year, you just in tax season, you call them, send them your information, you could probably use anyone. But if you're looking for advice about how to grow your business, how to understand how your business is performing and make better business decisions across the year. And I think also if you're looking for maybe being a little bit more proactive in strategy, then having someone who really understands how your business works is going to be to your advantage. And to me, that's where our value actually comes in. It's in proactive strategy. It's in looking forward and meeting with clients and helping them to understand how their business is actually doing. And then to say like, where do you want to go from here and how do we get you there? And we look at taxes as like just one strategy that we can use to leverage to optimize your business and your financial performance. But it really is one piece of a much bigger picture.
Yeah.
Actually, I think taxes is really the small piece of what we do, honestly.
Yeah, that's what I think people don't realize. And from my exposure over just dental school and now just getting into working, it seems like practice owners, they're such entrepreneurs, and most of them don't just own a dental practice as they go through their career. Then they have a real estate LLC they have and all these separate little entities, as well as like their personal tax planning and overall, financial scheme. So are you helping your clients if they have others kind of subsidies that they manage?
Yeah, we started our business saying we serve healthcare small business. We serve doctors and dentists and vets who own their own practice. And then what we realized really quickly is like, just like you said, a lot of them have other hobbies and interests and other investments, or their spouses do. So maybe not the doctor, but their husband or wife also owns a separate business. So we started with dentists as like our niche. And now if you look across our client base, we do serve a bunch of other businesses, but they're all kind of ancillary to those dental practices that we serve. But you're right. There is an entrepreneurial spirit that I really love in the dental industry specifically. And I do think it's kind of unique to dentists, that there is this love of being a business owner. And what I'll say about that is that, like, I actually went to business school and got my undergrad in psychology and then added on accounting. But when I did that, like, most of my cohorts went to work like in corporate America, not to become business owners. And so all of my business owner, like entrepreneur clients, didn't go to school for business, which I find really fascinating. They just found something they really love and are passionate about, and then decided they were going to make that into their own career and be their own boss. And so again, I think that's where we can come in and partner and add value, because you are really good at your, like, the business of dentistry or the thing that you're passionate about. And you didn't go to school to understand like the business side of running a dental practice.
Definitely. And earlier you were mentioning that taxes is kind of a small part of the overall kind of financial strategy. So I know you can't give like specific financial advice, obviously, but kind of broadly speaking, how are you making an impact on dentists when it comes to planning for their future financial goals?
Yeah. Well, to me, first of all, I think we do have to work as a holistic team. So one of the things that we do is we say, like, hey, if we're going to work on your practice, we want to work on your individual return as well, because all of those finances go together. And we want to run them separately. We want to run your business separate from your personal life. When we're evaluating strategy across, your whole financial picture, we want to make sure we're looking at both. So that's one, like making sure that we truly understand what's going on in all of your business and investments. And then the big piece for me is just communication. So most of our clients pay us like a flat monthly fee. And as part of that, we have regular meetings built into the schedule, so that throughout the year, we're meeting with our clients to talk about what's going on in their business, how they're performing. We compare that to how they've done in prior years, and then also to where they want to go. And sometimes that's as simple as saying, like, hey, Dr. Haley, tell me what you're wanting to do in the business. Like, what are your goals? What are you hoping to accomplish? Do you have new equipment that you're wanting to invest in? Is there new technology you're wanting to embrace, new CE that you're planning to go to and then bring back into the practice? And let's evaluate the timing. So a lot of it is strategy around when to invest and how to optimize based on like your current tax rates and brackets, what makes sense for implementation and the timing of that implementation so that you can grow in the most efficient way. And then as far as tax savings, most of my dental clients are in the highest tax brackets. And as you make more and more income, you have less deductions and credits that are available to you because things start to phase out. One of those is like your student loan interest. And as we know, most of our dentists graduating have pretty high student loan interest. And the more money you make, you start to phase out of your ability to deduct that student loan interest on your return. But there are some things when you're a business owner that you can always deduct. And two of those are, investment in equipment and technology, and the other is retirement. So investing in your future and saving for your future. So a lot of what we do is looking at how do you reinvest profits back into your business in a strategic way to grow it? And then how do you invest in your own future savings so that when you're ready to retire, you have the financial security and ability to retire and live the way that you want to live.
Nice. And is your team at Fiat specifically all other CPAs, or do you have like in-house certified financial planners or like other people in the finance realm?
Yeah, we are a mix of all. So on the tax team, I'm a CPA and our tax manager is a CPA. And then we've got an enrolled agent and a tax preparer without a license kind of underneath. And then we also have 3 bookkeepers. And as a bookkeeper, you don't have to have like a certain designation because you're not filing a tax return. And our bookkeeping team is really they're the ones who are working with our clients on a monthly basis to make sure that like your payroll and credit cards and banks and everything are all reconciled and tracking the income and the expenses inside of your business so you can evaluate how you're performing. And then, so that's kind of on our tax and accounting side. And then we also have a wealth management arm. You can kind of see I've got like a wealth management sign behind me. And we also have a wealth management arm, and that's a team of financial planners and estate planning attorneys. And so most of them are CFPs. And then we've got like a JD that we work with as well. And then some insurance licensees. So on that side, that team is looking more at how you manage your money and your investments to grow them. And there's a tax piece to that, but they're definitely like two separate. We're looking at tax planning and strategy. They're looking at financial planning and investment strategy.
Love, exciting and new. Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever. It's
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships at Bermudan and British Registry.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply. USAA.
Got it. Yeah, that was kind of one of my next questions was, I know if you're advising someone on their finances, there's so many components going in, like you said, attorneys, financial planners. Do you ever even work with like office managers of the dental practice, or only if that's like a spouse situation? I don't know like what your communications look like and how often you're communicating with other people for your clients.
Yeah, I would say each practice is a little bit different and unique. Larger practices with multiple doctors or associates in the practice tend to have an office manager who's doing more. And then when I've got like a solo doctor entrepreneur, they tend to take on more. And I think at some point it does become the owner doctor's decision of like how much they want to keep on their plate versus delegate to their team. And so some, give more responsibility to their office manager to manage and control the finances on a regular basis, and others kind of retain more of that control. And I don't think one is bad necessarily. It truly is just like what capacity do you have in the owner of the business to manage all of it? And at some point you have to decide what your highest and best use is, which typically as the owner doctor of the practice, that's seeing patients and like growing and managing your team and building and developing it. So I do think at some point it does become important to look at how you delegate some of those financial tasks off of your plate as the owner. But usually those first few years in the business, you're holding on to more and then you're slowly letting go.
Yeah, and I think it's so nice to have someone like you and your team reviewing everything if you are going to be delegating to an office manager, because you hear so many horror stories of offices, all the bad things going on. So it's nice to have a team of people that are also checking in on things and saying, oh, like this didn't seem like it was done quite right. Like, let's investigate that a little bit more.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, the dental industry is pretty rife with fraud. And so if you are delegating things to your team without there being any supervision involved, I think that's where there's risk that could happen inside of a dental practice. I've seen it actually only one time in my career, and it was in a practice that my client acquired. So it wasn't her existing team, but we definitely found it as we were doing the due diligence as part of the acquisition. And it's still it's a little ugly, still messy and sad to see. It's there.
And you said you're working mostly with practice owner dentists. For someone in my position that's coming out and is an associate dentist, and they kind of have whatever range of like a fixed income for the most part, maybe not so much deductions or crazy stuff going on, would you still recommend starting to get that relationship going with a dental specific accountant, or can we just go on like a random website, and file that way?
Yeah, I think it probably depends on your path to ownership. So if you are happy being an associate for the foreseeable future, you could probably get away really easily with like a TurboTax as a solution, because you've got a W-2. There's not a lot of complication in filing your taxes. But if you know that you want to be an owner, I think it's worth starting the conversation early and building a relationship with a dental CPA, because even the road to practice ownership, the identifying a practice you want to own and buying that practice, like it can be a pretty stressful and overwhelming process. I tell my clients, like, you should expect you're going to cry. Like at least once, some tears will happen in this process, but at the end you'll be an owner. But I think that's like, you kind of jump into the deep end as you go to buy a practice. And so if you can start some of those conversations, start to understand how practices are valued, understand what you're looking at when it comes to practice financials, what information you're going to get in a process of buying a practice. If you can start that conversation early, I think it's going to help to set expectations and to get you into a practice sooner. You can be working with a CPA as you do it. And then my other caveat would be, if you're an associate who is a 1099 employee, so you're a contractor and not a W-2, you are effectively self-employed. So you are effectively a business owner when you get paid on a 1099 instead of on a W-2. I think there actually is opportunity for dental associates who are paid on a 1099 to be working with a dental specific CPA, because that's when we can actually start to say, hey, you have this income coming in on a 1099, and that's effectively business income. And now we can talk about business deductions that can offset that income. And if you have never had to be a business owner before, you're not even going to know what opportunities are there or the types of things you could consider. That might be things like paying your cell phone and your internet out of the business, any insurance that you cover on your own, all of your own continuing education, your travel in your car. Maybe we could even consider like a home office deduction for those 1099 contractors. So there ends up being a lot more opportunity where we can strategize. When you're a W-2 employee, we can't offset any deductions against that. And so we're just more limited in what we can offer as suggestions or help. So normally I tell people who come to me who are W-2 employees is, hey, like you're going to pay more money than you would pay if you went to TurboTax. And so the question becomes, is that worth it for you in order to have like answers to your questions and access to information and prep for the next stage of life, wherever that is going to lead you? And especially if you're going into practice ownership, then I think that's worthwhile. But it's definitely, it's not TurboTax. It's a different price for sure.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. And we hadn't talked much yet about, buying a practice, acquiring one, startup, stuff like that. So timeline wise, if someone is saying, okay, I'm currently working as an associate and I know I want to start looking around and acquire a practice when I can find one that checks these boxes. So they might be working with a broker or just kind of talking around. At what point should they get connected with a CPA? Do they wait till they found the practice they want and then they're going to get it analyzed? Or you guys probably have connections. So like, how soon do you recommend that they get in touch with someone?
Most people come to me when they've already found a practice that they've identified that they want to purchase. And typically that happens because they've been working with a broker, they find a practice they want to purchase, and the broker says like, you need to talk to your accountant and your attorney. And they're like, oh no, I don't have one. And so then they get introduced to me. But in an ideal world, you're talking with me before. And I have helped several doctors just to identify like what actually is the right practice for them to buy. And if you don't know how to evaluate practice financials, you're going to be getting a bunch of information from a broker about each of these potential practices to acquire. And I don't know that without some like expert eyes on those financials, I think sometimes you can just kind of miss opportunities or not necessarily think of all the questions to ask about a practice. So like, for example, I had a doctor who had a target practice in mind when she came to me. She was pretty far down the road. And once I kind of became involved, we were asking for production and collection reports from the selling dentist. And once we got those, what we realized is that selling dentist was doing a ton of procedures that the buying dentist actually was not comfortable doing. And so in terms of production and collection numbers, as a buyer, she could not keep up with the revenue inside of the practice. And so the bank then was unwilling to finance the full amount of the loan because they were like, hey, you're not going to have the same amount of revenue in your business that the selling doctor would have because you can't do that production and collections. Obviously, she could go to CE and get some training and get up to speed. It just wouldn't be immediate. And so it put limitations around the financing and really the ability to kind of structure a deal in a way that both the buyer and seller were happy with. And so we ended up having to walk away from the deal. And those are kind of the stories where I think, hey, if you had been involved with a dental CPA from the beginning, we might have weeded that out as an even potential acquisition target from the very beginning, because we would have identified like you can't kind of keep up here. And this isn't really a good match with what you're good at and with the type of practice you really want.
Yeah.
And I'll say that's like my warning sad story.
Yeah.
There's actually only been 3 times where I've told a doctor to not acquire a practice that they were looking at. So most of the time our goal is like to acquire a practice just with eyes wide open and to say, hey, as long as you know what you're buying and you're aware of what you're going to step into on day one, then everything's usually manageable. But every once in a while we come across a situation where we say, hey, this really isn't a good fit.
Yeah. And I mean, that's like incredibly valuable for someone to get that information. It stinks that it was a little too far down the line for that person, but it's a great cautionary tale for people and something to keep in the back of their minds.
Yeah. And even if people listen to this podcast and at least now they know to ask that question, right? Like, hey, let me look at the production and collection reports first, look at the procedure codes, make sure these are things I feel comfortable with before we even walk down this path.
And as for working with you or similar companies, So if someone is getting advisement for their practice acquisition versus tax advisement versus wealth management versus everything, I'm sure there's all different kinds of, like you were saying, is typically some kind of monthly fee. So are people able to kind of utilize certain aspects of your company individually?
Yeah, we offer that kind of flat monthly fee. That's how the majority of our clients are structured, but we do have clients who just use like an a la carte method. Like, hey, I just want you to prepare my return. I've got other financial advisors or attorneys or other people who are using that I'm using in different capacities. And so we just talk with them in tax season and sometimes in the middle of the year. And, that work has to be done. Like we talked about before, like the compliance has to happen. So we're happy to do that and be part of the team in that way. I just think our highest value tends to be when we're doing strategy and planning and we're meeting with our clients across the year.
Definitely. And for someone, because I guess I don't even know. So you're in Minnesota, you said.
Yeah.
What states do you work across?
We actually have clients in 28 different states right now. So
Okay.
We're pretty much across the United States. I'm licensed as a CPA in Oregon and Minnesota. But really, where you're licensed for a CPA license matters more if you're doing audited financial statements. When it comes to tax return filing, we're legally allowed to file tax returns in any state in the country. So our licensing state doesn't prevent us from filing tax returns in other places. So that's kind of a unique thing with tax returns. I think most people think like, oh, you're a Minnesota CPA, you have to do Minnesota taxes. And that's not the case.
Okay, yeah, that's good information for people to keep in mind. And if someone is kind of prompted by this episode, they want to find someone to work with and they're going to start going on Google, asking around, meeting with people, figuring out who's the right fit. What are some good questions you think they could ask prospective CPAs?
I mean, I would ask what industries they serve. So you can't always tell that from a CPA's website, but most CPAs do have kind of a niche of the majority of their clients fall within a certain space. So I'd ask what industries they serve. And then I have two kind of requirements when I am looking at even working with clients, but what I would say is communication. So you want an accountant who's going to get back to you and who's going to communicate with you timely so that when you have questions, and especially as you're new to being a business owner, if you have a lot of questions up front, you're going to want someone who's like easy to get a hold of, either phone or email. And then the other piece is technology. So I said, we serve clients across 28 different states. And to me, I think that your CPA should leverage technology to be more efficient, be able to work with clients everywhere. And so that's a big part of our business is how do we use systems that are cloud-based? How can we work to automate processes to be as efficient as possible, to get you information as timely as possible? So those would be my two things, communication and like technology and efficiency.
Definitely. Those, especially for someone younger, that's like their pet peeves. Like you want someone that's kind of with it and like same pace and energy as you. So that's very important. I like that.
Yeah. And I worked a lot of places that like we were paperless or we went paperless while I was working there. And now when I started my own practice, I was like, no, we just start paperless. I don't need people bringing me boxes of receipts. Everything comes electronically these days. We can all work in the cloud. It's the way to go.
I love that.
Yes.
We already kind of answered this, but the last thing I wanted to ask about is just if you have any kind of final overarching advice for new dentists early in their careers that you think is really going to set them up for more success.
The only thing I was thinking about is, and we touched briefly on just like the amount of student loan debt. And I know that can be pretty overwhelming for new dentists coming out of school. And I do get questions often from new dentists about like different or various student loan repayment programs and how they might qualify. And a lot of the qualifications is, income-based repayment plans. And so the answer to that is to say, hey, well, if you want to qualify for this income-based repayment plan, you have to keep your income below a certain threshold so you can keep your payment amounts pretty low. And in my experience, honestly, the better answer is to just make as much money as you can as early as you can. And you might have to pay more on your student loans, but you're holding yourself back from future growth and from building wealth sooner. And so that would be my other recommendation is like, don't limit your income so that you don't have to pay off your student loans. Like your goal is to grow and build your income as quickly as possible so that you have more than enough cash flow to pay on those loans and to then focus on building, the reserve to buy a practice, to invest in your family, to save for your future. So just, don't hinder yourself. by like putting yourself in this bucket, like I have to make less than this number so that I can, not pay a huge amount of student loan interest.
That's really important and goes a lot into very timely with like recording at the end of the year and kind of like mindset going into a new year too. Like we're always talking about like abundance and like just there's always more possibilities out there and not being self-limiting and holding yourself back. And I know it's probably very hard for a lot of people with such student debt to think that way, but it's possible. And you have so many clients that you work with that all went to school, all paid a lot of money and are making it work and doing a good job. So it's possible for people.
Yeah. One of the things I like to say is that you can't cost cut your way to prosperity. And I think that budgeting is important. It's important to look at your expenses and figure out how you can limit them. And that's part of saying, hey, is there a way we could limit my student loan repayments? But in general, it's always going to be easier to grow your wealth and grow your prosperity if you are just making more money overall rather than like trying to cost cut pennies on your expense lines.
Definitely. And if people have any more questions or want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can find our website at fiattax.com. And my email is ccarlson@fiattax.com. And happy to take emails and answer questions. We offer like complimentary 30-minute client intros too. So that's a great way to meet in person and to answer some of those really like personal or like tax specific questions for clients. And I love to do that. I love the education piece and I love to meet new clients and just be a resource in a world where I think sometimes it's hard to get clear answers. So if I can provide a little bit of clarity for people, I love that.
Awesome, Carly. Thank you so much for your time today and for all the great insight that you shared.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.